Welcome to the Genealogy Radio Show, the radio show that's keeping you in the loop. Today, we have a follow-up from last week's show, another fascinating show on rare names in Irish history and common names. I'd like to pass you over to Lucas.
Thank you, Nick. I'll be speaking first on some naming conventions through Irish history. The allure of a brilliant princess from a beautiful and often foreign land has been a driving force for Irish girls' names for hundreds of years. Such women in Irish mythology include Aoife, warrior queen of Scotland, Niamh, the mystic, immortal princess. In fact, the nation of Scotland was only so called after an Irish tribe, the Scotti, conquered the native Picts. This Irish tribe took their name from their legendary first queen, Scotia, an Egyptian princess. This legend is recorded in the medieval manuscript, the Scotti Chronicon. In fact, the name of this nation, Éireann, comes from a queen and a god of the earth, Eru, according to the Leabhar Gabla na hÉireann. Whether after a mighty queen like Queen Maeve of Connacht, or a determined but tragic hero like Grania of myth, and indeed Granuaile, all these women had agency and fought for what they wanted in love and war. And this tendency to name girls with foreign names to romanticize may be why there's hundreds of girls named Hilda and Hulda even, when Norse boys' names, as we saw last episode, faded away rather fast. The Normans who settled Ireland often came from Wales and brought over some Welsh spellings as well as French. In 1911, Dublin, we found a Donna Margaret Costello, 23, Donna being a Welsh name and Costello being a Norman name. We know that names get passed down through the family, so she may have had a parallel back in the 1100s. The Normans also brought the French names and some others, like Alison, Alice, and Joyce. They were French, and Kate, which was Greek, but brought over by the Normans. In the 1800s, and especially 1900s, during the Gaelic revival, amidst the zeitgeist of Celtic Renaissance and revolutionary zeal, these old Celtic names came back, and new names inspired by Irish culture arose as well. The popularity of Saoirse and Ashling came from this time. Cian. So some of the most popular names in the 1911 census were based off names from the Bible and popular saints. Can you please tell me a little about that and some of these names?
The name Mary comes from the Latin form of the New Testament Greek names, Miriam and Maria. It derives from a few Hebrew words. The first word means sea of bitterness. The second word means rebelliousness, and the third means wished for child. In the New Testament, the name was most importantly borne by Mary, the mother of Jesus, who conceived the baby Jesus while remaining a virgin. The name was also borne by Mary Magdalene, who Jesus cured of demons. She became an avid follower and witnessed his crucifixion and resurrection. The name became really popular in Christian countries thanks to the Virgin Mary. The name was considered sacred in Ireland and only became popular in Ireland in the late 10th and early 11th centuries. By the 1911 census, Mary was the most popular women's name in Ireland, with 16% of all Irish women bearing the name. Mary was also the most popular women's name in America until 1946. Famous Marys include former Queen of England Bloody Mary, Mary, Queen of Scots, and Mary Poppins. The name has also been borne by two former presidents of Ireland, Mary Robinson and Mary McAleese. The name Bridget is the anglicised version of the Irish name Bridget. It means exalted one. In Irish mythology, Bridget was the goddess of fire, poetry, and wisdom, and the daughter of the god Dagda. Bridget has been borne by one of our patron saints, Saint Bridget, who founded a monastery in County Kildare and was called Mother of the Gaels. The name was considered sacred in Ireland until the 1600s. In Irish tradition, if the first child was a girl, families would often name her Bridget after Saint Bridget so she could lead the family. By 1911, Bridget was the second most common female name in Ireland, comprising 7.9% of the total female population. Other Irish abbreviations of the name Bridget include Breed and Breda. The name Margaret comes from the Persian word for pearl, which is margarita in French. And in the early years, the word margarita was Latinized in France to Marguerite, which in turn became Margaret in the English-speaking world. The name Margaret is very popular among Christians due to martyred Saint Margaret of the 4th century. Legends tell of Saint Margaret escaping a dragon, making her very popular during medieval times. Saint Margaret is also the patron saint of childbirth and expectant mothers. Margaret was the most popular name in Britain for years and the third most popular name in Ireland during the 1911 census. Margaret was always associated with being a rich and classic name, often used for queens and saints, like for example, Queen Elizabeth II's sister, Princess Margaret. It was also the name of the first ever female British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. The short abbreviation of the name is Maggie and Meg. In French, Marguerite is another word for Daisy, making Daisy a short form of Margaret. Other variations include the German name Margot, the shortened version Greta, and names such as Peggy and Rita. The Irish abbreviation of Margaret is Mairead. Ellen, as a name, has two very conflicting stories of origin. The first being that the name Ellen is of English origin, meaning bright or shining light. The name is an Old English form of Helen. The name Helen stems from the Greek name Helena. This was the name of the mother of Constantine the Great, a devout Christian who was credited with founding the True Cross. It was a popular name in Britain due to this legend, even though it has no historical basis, that she was born in Britain. Ellen was always more common in medieval England, however, with the Renaissance name, the name Helen slowly began to replace Ellen. The second possible origin of Ellen is that it comes from a Greek biblical name, Elizabeth, a derivative of the Hebrew name Elisheva. Translated from Hebrew, the El means God of Israel, and the Shiva translates as oath. Thus, the name Ellen is said to mean, my God is an oath. This name and its variants are spread all over the world. The name appears in the Old Testament as the name of Aaron's wife, Elisheva, and in the New Testament as the name of the wife of the priest Zechariah and mother of John the Baptist. Which story is true? I don't know. Possibly both origins of the name Ellen carry truth. However, it is impossible to know for sure.
Thank you, Cian. Now, Connor, as discussed last week, names stereotypically Irish, born in Donegal and as such, did not appear in the 1901 and 1911 census, but have grown in popularity in modern times. What have you found in terms of girls' names that follow this same pattern?
Cueva, Kloda, Kayla, Ashland, Durville, and Deirdre are examples of Irish names which are either not present on the 1901 and 1911 census or are only present in very small numbers. First, we'll start with the name Cueva. Cueva comes from Gaelic and Scottish origins. The name comes from the famous name Kevin, which in Irish is Kevin. Cueva means beautiful, dear, or noble. According to the 2019 Central Statistics Office, Cueva is the 17th most common female name given to babies as of 2019, which is a far cry from over 100 years ago, as in both 1901 and 1911 the name didn't even exist. A common variant of the name comes from the English version Kiva. Next, we'll move on to the name Kloda. Kloda is a name that comes from Irish origin. While it is quite popular in modern times, ranking number 50 in terms of the top female baby names according to the CSO in 2019. The name Kloda gained its popularity both from the River Kloda, which is situated in County Waterford, but also comes from the famous Lady Kloda Beresford, who was an Anglo-Irish philanthropist, writer, and aristocrat. Lady Kloda Beresford wrote 2 famous books, the most famous of which was on raising awareness for homelessness, and she tried to raise money with the profits of the book to tackle homelessness. Another common name in modern Ireland is Saoirse. One of the most famous Saoirses in the world is that of esteemed Hollywood actress Saoirse Ronan. Saoirse Ronan is one of the main reasons for the name Saoirse becoming more common amongst different cultures. Saoirse is an Irish word which, when translated, can mean freedom or liberty. When researching the 1901 and 1911 census, there was no account of the name Saoirse, as it didn't come into existence until the 1920s. However, in the 1911 census, there is 120 people with the name Saoirse, which was more common than the Irish variation around this time. The name Saoirse was first adopted during the War of Independence and Ireland's fight for freedom, hence the definition. According to the CSO statistics in 2019, Saoirse was the 23rd most popular female baby name in Ireland, which is a far cry difference from not existing 100 years ago. Ashling is a name that first came into use in the 20th century. The name was originally used in poems in the 18th and 19th century and means dream, vision, or apparition. The name Ashling reached its peak popularity in 1998, ranking as the 21st most popular girl's name in Ireland according to the CSO. The name, as stated before, only came into usage in the 20th century, and as such there exists nobody on the 1901 or 1911 census using the name Ashling, with only one person in the 1911 census using the variant Ashland spelled with 2 N's. Known variants of the name Ashling are Ashland spelled with 1 or 2 N's. Durville, originally Durville, comes from Irish dur, meaning daughter, and the Irish vil, meaning poet. The name Durville first came into usage around the 1960s, but unfortunately has never received much popularity for unknown reasons. Many years the name has less than 3 people given the name, meaning for many years there simply exists no data for the popularity of the name on the Central Statistics Office. The highest popularity the name as variants ever got was ranked 236 in 1966. Known variants of Durville are Durvla, Durbla, and Durvilla. In the 1901 and 1911 census, there exists nobody with the name Durville or any of its variants. Deirdre is the name of a figure in Celtic mythology. The story of Deirdre, also known as Deirdre of the Sorrows, is a classic Irish tragedy that follows the story of Deirdre and her ultimate destruction. The original story has been adapted by many writers throughout the ages, including William Butler Yeats. The name remained consistently popular from 1964 to 1997, and was 7th most popular girl's name in 1966 and 1973, according to the CSO. There exists only one known variant of the name, that being Deidra, which is far less popular than Deirdre. In the 1901 and 1911 census, there exists a single instance of Deirdre in 1901 and 17 instances of the name in 1911, with nobody by the name Deidre being present in either 1901 or 1911.
Thank you, Connor. Now, Oisin. Girls' naming patterns experience rapid change between those years of 1901 and 1911. Can you tell me some examples of girls' names that have grew rapidly between those years?
Certainly. Girls' naming patterns between 1901 and 1911 featured a growth in popularity in girls' names such as Eileen, Sarah, and Josephine, as Irish people began to branch out from the names they had restricted themselves with previously. In the 10 years between the two censuses, names such as these grew rapidly to appear far more frequently in the results of these surveys. First is Eileen. Eileen is a name common today in both Ireland and England, yet the name only began becoming popular in the 1911 census, indicating that there were, in the 10 years that had passed since the 1901 and 1911 census, the name grew in popularity. The name Eileen is of Gaelic and Scottish descent. The meaning of the name is bright, shining one, indicating someone with this name is quite unique and special. Eileen is known as the anglicised form of the Irish name Eileen. It has many variations of the name in the English language, such as Aileen and Eileen. The name Eileen is thought to be the Irish version of the name Helen. The number of women with the name Eileen was recorded at over 1,944 in the 1901 census. This number grew rapidly to 5,962 people with the name in both findings, in the findings of the 1911 census. The name is one that has continued to be present in both Irish and English society, with the Irish architect Eileen Gray bearing the name. Second is Kathleen, which also grew in popularity between the 1901 and 1911 censuses. The name Kathleen is the anglicised name of Caitlin, an Irish variation. The name has various meanings, one of them being that Kathleen translates to pure and clear. Kathleen was the 8th most popular name in Ireland in the 1911 census, with 23,159 girls using the name. This number was a rapid growth from the 10,223 girls which held the name in the 1901 census. The name Kathleen and its many variations derives from the originally from the Greek name Catherine. Besides the Irish name Caitlin, alternative is also Kathleen, spelt with a C in the place of a K, and Catherine, which is the old French form that Kathleen took inspiration from. Authors such as the American author Kathleen Winsor and the famed British author J.K. Rowling, whose real name is Joanne Catlin, shared this beautiful name today. Moving on, we will discuss the name Josephine. Josephine is the feminine form of the Hebrew name Joseph, which originated in France. Josephine is primarily a diminutive form of the French name Josephe, which means Jehovah. It became popular in the 1800s thanks to the high profile of Josephine de Beauharnais, which is the wife of Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte. There are many different interpretations of Josephine across many different languages. For example, in Spanish, Josephine is Josefina. And other alternative diminutive spellings include Jojo, Fifi, and Josie. The name is common among European royalty, with the Queen of Sweden, Josephine of Luxembourg, being one of many to use the name. In the 1901 census, the number of women using the name was 6,312. This skyrocketed to 12,394 in the findings of the 1911 census. The name grew in popularity, however, but in modern day Ireland, it has seems to have dramatically dropped in popularity, with only 10 girls in 2014 being named Josephine, according to the CSO. The name continues to be recognized, however, in many popular fictional shows, with characters such as Josephine Potter in Dawson's Creek, novel characters such as Josephine Joe March in the well-known Little Women, in addition to prominent figures in society, such as Josephine Clay Ford, Henry Ford's granddaughter, using the name. Lastly, we will finish with the unique name Sarah. The name Sarah featured a growth in popularity between 1901 and 1911. Sarah is the female name found in many corners of the world, from Europe to the Americas and the Middle East. It is a prominent name of the Abrahamic religions, with heavy ties to Jewish and Christian communities. There are many different interpretations of the name in language and culture. In the Old Testament of the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, and the Quran, Sarah refers to Sarah, wife of Abraham. In Arabic, Sarah means joy and delight, while in Hebrew and Persian, it means woman of high ranking, such as a princess. In modern Hebrew, Sarah, the diminutive form of Sarah, translates to minister. In the 1901 census, the name Sarah was familiar in Ireland, with 2,521 girls using the name at the time the 1901 census results were given. However, this name grew rapidly more popular in the 10 years that occurred between the two censuses, with 3,125 girls being named Sarah in the 1911 census findings. During the era of Nazi Germany, male and female Jews were required to identify themselves with names that were distinctly Jewish to separate themselves from the rest of the German population. Male Jews were required to adopt the male Jewish name Israel, and females were to adopt the name Sarah. Many notable figures have carried the name and its common derivative Sarah, with people such as the former governor of Alaska, Sarah Palin, and comedian Sarah Silverman adopting the name.
Thank you, Cian. That's all for this episode. If you'd like to see it again or see the first part, you can check it out at clansandsurnames.com.